Hey guys, today's story is about a DM that could actually DM decently, and him turning into a not-so-great DM. This was one of the first times ever playing D&D 5e, but this was not the first time I've ever played D&D. The cast for the story is as follows. The DM. He was a good storyteller, but he had some distinct ideas of what D&D should be. Myself, I was playing a lawful evil paladin of unnamed dark gods. My character was cordial and pleasant at face value. He was darkly sadistic and manipulative in reality. He was basically Lorgar from 40k, face tattoos included. There was the cleric, who was the only other newbie in the group, playing a neutral good cleric. A little stereotypical, super nice young girl that always saw the best in people and was a little ray of sunshine, yada yada yada. Great at role-playing, though did get confused here and there about particular rules and mechanics on occasion. Then there were the warlock, fighter, ranger, and rogue. They weren't super important to the going-ons of this campaign. They were decent players. But there was one important fact. All of them were either true neutral, chaotic neutral, or lawful neutral. In other words, sitting in the grey middle area of me and the cleric. So first session, one of the first things that we do, as agreed, is tell each other about what our characters are, or at least what they appear to be to everyone else. Since we all agreed on the sanctity of out-of-character knowledge not being used by the characters without reason, I told them all about the truth of my character. Everyone agreed that it would be really interesting to have a naive, good cleric and a corrupting evil paladin fighting for control of the party. Skip a couple of months and the campaign was actually pretty fun, if a little lacking in originality. A king had hired us to track down and slay a lich that was plaguing and terrorizing the land with armies of undeath. But the dynamic soon became apparent. My paladin was pushing the party to become increasingly bloodthirsty and merciless, often saying that the souls of our foes were irredeemable, while the cleric tried to have cultists spared and seek retribution, and pleaded to the party that they do the same. Eventually, the cleric found out about who my gods were, and my alignment. During downtime, the cleric and the paladin met on a balcony, and had a small chat, which culminated in an agreement. I would do all in my power to turn the party to my side, and the cleric the same. We would not take violence or sabotage to each other directly, as this was a test of their souls and their character. Mostly, this was an agreement between players, to prevent PvP, despite however this went down. The first red flag was when the DM voiced his disappointment, telling us that there was no reason our characters should not have attacked each other on sight.
My character doesn't like attacking people she knows, and she still thinks he can be saved.
Mine likes to corrupt more than anything, and would prefer seeing to revoke her gods over killing her.
The DM clearly wasn't happy, but he relented. The game continued, and the tug-of-war within the party growing more and more. And I start noticing how even my failed rolls to corrupt NPCs to my side start working. Soon enough, I elevate my faith from underground cult to state religion. I honestly got a little upset at this. It's clear the DM was fudging rules in my favor, throwing the balance of power in my favor as I am suddenly crowned the Grand Cardinal of my faith, with a technical army of followers, and a literal army of fanatics. I don't blame them, but when the party started more openly siding with the cleric to
balance it out,
I admit, it did kind of hurt. They thought the DM and I were in league with each other. I told the DM that I didn't like the blatant favoritism, and told him to back it up a bit. He feigned ignorance and refused to acknowledge the problem. This went on for a while, and it became obvious that the DM was trying to drive a schism between the party and myself, giving me unholy magical equipment and even artifacts relating to my dark faith, while the party were given nothing of the sort, and I had to rely on teamwork to match the sheer powerhouse that I had become. It got so bad that I forgot modifiers and outright refused to use some of the artifacts, just so I didn't become some crappy Mary Sue and ruin it for the rest of the party. This all came to a head at the end of the campaign. As we confronted the Lich and we began to battle, I took a small band of NPC followers to use as meat shields and helpers. Because if I was stuck with these sheeple, I was going to use them. The fight is harder than nails, and all but one of the NPCs are wiped out, and the warlock is unconscious, and the cleric is almost out of spell slots. Suddenly, the Lich looked at me and casted Banishment. I'm about to roll a saving throw when the DM tells me it's unavoidable, because this was some kind of uber banishment with infinite duration and no saving throws. I'm more than a little annoyed. The party continued to the entire second half of the fight, while glancing at me awkwardly as my last followers fled back to the city. After the fight was done, the party began to divvy up the loot, without me there, and I get saved by my followers who happen to know the exact counterspell to return me to the material world. There, I find out that the master plan is in action, and that my cult was enacting my plot to take over the kingdom and bring the dark gods into this world. Of course, I never had a plan like that, the extent of my intentions as a character being to spread my faith far and wide so all may know about the glory of the dark gods. And this is where the finale truly lied. As the city burned around me, I was suddenly overcome with immense unholy power, giving me a massive stat, AC, and proficiency bonus. The DM even gave me legendary resistances. I became the BBEG against my will. The party returned to the city to see it in flames, cultists running around killing people, demons among them, and the only building being untouched being my giant cathedral, where the DM just straight up told them,
You feel the paladin residing in it, having revealed his true evil.
I'm just kind of in shock at this point, a mix of absolutely pissed and in denial. This was never what I wanted, not what I wanted my character to become. My turns consisted of directing my minions to stop the heroes, while I'm forced to sit around in my cathedral waiting to get killed. When my former party finally got to the cathedral after marching through suspiciously empty streets, I cut off the DM and described the scene. The cathedral hall was practically carpeted in corpses, all of the cultists having been butchered to a man, and me sitting alone on the altar. You could see that the DM was particularly giddy, ready for everyone to start rolling initiative. But screw that. I didn't level my charisma for a spell save DC. I leveled it to talk. So we talked. My character decrying the tragedy around us as
the failing of the ignorant and idiotic, a perversion of my intentions.
And at this point you could see the DM's face go red, which was pretty nice. And the cleric telling me to call off the demonic invasion, that I can still do good. It was now that the DM blew up. He started to yell at us, and began to roll initiative for us. Suddenly, I'm no longer in control of my own character, and he started attacking. The fight was an absolute crap show. And I'm just glad the party had a long rest between killing the Lich and fighting me. Otherwise it would have been a slaughter. Still, the warlock died, and the fighter was knocked unconscious. And the rogue was now permanently missing an arm. But they had pushed me into unconsciousness. And the DM described the unholy energy flaying my body like a vortex, leaving me completely vulnerable. And the cleric, bless her heart, used her last 2 spell slots. She cast Protection from Evil on my unconscious body, and then used her last slot to heal me. The DM then described how I grabbed the cleric's neck and snapped it.
No, he doesn't. The evil spirit that was obviously possessing him had left his body, and he can't come back because of the protection.
What? No, you're evil. So he kills you.
Obviously not. After she even went out of her way to save my life from the darkness.
The DM just exploded, shouting and yelling incoherently before trying to kick us out, saying we were ruining the game for everyone else by undermining his twist villain. A twist villain he made without the villain's approval, or knowing. Mind you, this wasn't his house, it was the Warlock's. The Warlock then stood up and told the DM to get out, and never come back. In a fit, the DM left, and while I wish I could say I never saw him again, I sadly did. Our next campaign was DM'd by the Warlock's player, and 2 of the NPCs were a cleric and a paladin, who had both lost almost all their powers after the cleric used all of her power to save the paladin's soul from damnation. Honestly, at the end of the day, I just don't know why the DM didn't even try to pass this by me first, and instead just tried to decide what my character was doing without any input from me. I know there are a lot worse DMs out there, and the campaign was generally fun for the most part. I'm just upset about how it had to end. Well guys, I think it's kind of a shame that, according to the OP at least, the campaign was actually okay for the most part, but the DM needed a bit of a reality check, I guess. If you plan on making a big twist for a player like this, you might want to pass it over with them, especially if you're going to have the entire party go against him. I would also like to say that the cleric actually was seemingly a really good RP character for the most part. I thought she would have been part of the issue in the end, but I was horribly wrong.